Welcome along. For the first time since 2009, there will be 4 English clubs in the draw for the quarter-finals of the Champions League. And in the next hour, all of them will find out their route to the final. We are building up to that. We've got representatives from each of the clubs joining us. Former Manchester City player and manager Stuart Pearce, ex-Liverpool goalkeeper Chris Kirkland, and the former Tottenham striker Darren Bent as well. Just about to settle in. Welcome along, gents. Hope you're as nervous as we're all feeling and as excited, I'm sure, as well. As is this man, Manchester United, and of course a former manager and the last man who got this club to a Champions League quarter-final in 2013-14. It is, of course, David Moyes. Absolute pleasure to have you with us, David. Thank you very much indeed. And we'll be getting your views over the course of the next couple of hours. Yes, the views of all 4 of those coming up. But in the next hour, Manchester City, Liverpool, Tottenham and Manchester United will find out their route to the Champions League final in Madrid. The Wanda Metropolitano, the home of Atletico Madrid. Quarter-finals and semi-finals will be drawn. And, of course, there's no country protection, so English teams can play each other. We could get 2 all-English ties. We could get them all, essentially, avoiding each other, or we might get 2 of them playing each other. Those are the options. Also in the hat, don't forget, though, Barcelona, Juventus, Ajax and also Porto. Some dangerous sides there in this quarter-final draw. Now, Pep Guardiola and Manchester City smashed Schalke to reach the quarter-finals. 7-0 they won that second leg, 10-2 on aggregate. That really sent a warning to their European rivals. Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool won in Munich to secure their passage. Last year's runners-up will be hoping to go one better, having lost to Real Madrid in Kiev last season. Mauricio Pochettino and Tottenham won home and away in the last 16 against Borussia Dortmund. Their title challenge in the Premier League, though, has fallen away. But can they make up for that in Europe? Yes, they are in that top 4, but the Champions League could mean so much. And who can forget Manchester United's progression in Paris? Wow, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's side overturned a 2-0 first-leg deficit away from home to progress, thanks to Marcus Rashford's stoppage time penalty. Let's have a look at a few of the key stats in the Champions League. Well, it is Manchester City who've scored the most goals in the competition with 26 goals, rather. That's 6 more than PSG, who, remember, are out. Let's have a look at individual goal scorers. And Lionel Messi and Roberto Lewandowski, you're about to see, are the men with the most goals in the competition so far. Both of those have 8, although, remember, again, the second option here is out. Robert Lewandowski plays for Bayern Munich, and they, of course, lost to Liverpool. Kylian Mbappe has the most assists with 5. But again, he's not going to add to that tally, is he? Because PSG are out of the competition. Riyad Mahrez and Leroy Sané of Manchester City will be hoping to go past him. Let's just show you the dates for the team's calendars that they'll be thinking about as this draw is made. Quarter-final first legs, just under a month's time, April 9th and 10th. Second legs, as always, a week later, April 16th and 17th. The first legs of the semi-finals are then on April the 30th and May the 1st. The second legs then, May the 7th and 8th. The final is at Atletico Madrid's Estadio Metropolitano, the Wanda Metropolitano, on June the 1st. Yes, we're going into June with this season and the Champions League final. So, 4 English sides into those quarter-finals. The only 2 previous occasions there have been 4 teams from the same country in the quarter-finals was England, and it was in 2008 and in 2009. Manchester United, Liverpool, Chelsea and Arsenal all progressing. It's a different lineup this time around. Now, this time, 4 years ago, no English teams in the quarter-finals. Also didn't happen in 2012-13. Things have steadily improved, though. You can see there the 2 seasons after 2014-15, just 1 team, Manchester City 15-16, and 16-17, 2017, it was Leicester. Last season, it was Liverpool and Manchester United. They played each other in the quarter-finals, and, of course, Liverpool went all the way through to the final, but they could possibly go one better this time around if they were to win in Madrid. So, let's bring our guests into this. You can see Stuart Pearce, Darren Bent and Chris Kirkland are here, and David Moyes is in Manchester. Let's go to David, actually. Welcome along. Can we just talk about English teams in general, first of all? Are we seeing a re-emergence of English teams as a dominant power in Europe, or is this just a one-off, do you think?
No, I think we're certainly seeing you know, a much improved top end of the Premier League, I think, from recent years. I think the quality of the players and the standard of the managers that are in the Premier League now are so good. I think we're seeing that in the results. And obviously having 4 teams in the Champions League and 2 in the Europa League as well, it's telling you how strong the top 6 in the Premier League are.
Let's just get the thoughts of our guests in the studio here. Are you surprised, Chris, that we've got 4? Did you expect there to be fewer? Or do you think actually they're all there on merit and there's not one that doesn't deserve to be in this quarter-final draw?
You don't get to this stage of the Champions League and not deserve to be there. You know, all credit, you know, first and foremost, credit to all 4 teams. You know, it's fantastic for the Premier League, fantastic for English football, and they all deserve to be there. And, you know, each one of them now have got a great chance to go on and hopefully win it.
Stuart, there's one team from the other countries, Spain, Italy, Portugal and the Netherlands. No Bundesliga team. They were all knocked out by Premier League teams, weren't they? But what does that say about the Premier League and them just getting teams to this stage, half of the draw, English?
Well, I think when you look at probably the 2 favourites that are based in England, Liverpool are as strong as they've ever been as a football club, I believe, since probably the 70s when they had their hands on the trophy. Manchester City, their squad is probably as strong as the club's ever been. So there's 2 clubs there straight away. Probably a little surprised that United have actually got to this stage, but the resurgence under Ollie has managed to get over the line. They're finding a way at the moment.
Who do you think is the favourite of all 8 teams, Darren? It's such a strong draw, isn't it? There's probably the other end is Porto, and most teams want them. But what about the favourites?
I'd say I'm probably on current form. You'd have to go Manchester City. I mean, you don't beat a team in the last round 7-0 if you're not going in the right direction. I mean, obviously there's the experience with the Barcelonas, Juventus, who have used to win this trophy. But I think on current form and the way Manchester City are playing, I don't think anyone's going to want to play them just because of how well they're playing and how they're dismantling his teams. Obviously got Guardiola, who knows the competition really, really well. So if I was in the others, I wouldn't want to play them.
Let's go back to David Moyes in Manchester. David, for Manchester United, would they rather face another English Cup, or do you think that they would try and avoid an all-English tie at this quarter-final stage?
I think they would try and avoid an all-English tie if possible. But I was listening to what the boys were saying there. I was fortunate enough to go and see Lyon in Barcelona a few weeks ago. And at the moment, I'd still keep Barcelona as favourites for the competition. I think over the recent years, the Spanish teams have tended to win the competition. So I think for Manchester City, Manchester United, Liverpool, whoever it may be, I think that for me, they'll all have to try and beat Barcelona to win the competition. I think they're the strongest.
OK, let's just focus a bit more then on United. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has inspired some turnaround, hasn't he, in form since being appointed caretaker manager after Jose Mourinho was sacked. Let's just show you their route to the quarter-finals. So, second place finish in their group. Remember that group that contained also Juventus, Valencia and Young Boys. Started off with a win, a draw and a loss. And that loss was at home to Juventus, but then a memorable win by 2-1 in Turin. They scored very late on to beat Young Boys, Amaro and Fellaini, and they went through despite that 2-1 loss to Valencia in the last group game. It was a bit of a dead rubber in the end at that game in Mestalla. So to the round of 16, beaten 2-0 at home by Paris Saint-Germain, but then what a famous night in that second leg at the Parc des Princes. Marcus Rashford's controversial stoppage time penalty seeing United through after 2 goals from Romelu Lukaku. United, another club with such rich European history. They've lifted the European Cup on 3 occasions, 1967-68, 1998-99, memorably against Bayern Munich and Barcelona, and then 2007-8, and that was in Moscow against Chelsea. They went out in the round of 16 last season, losing to Sevilla. Very surprising that, after losing 2-1 at home. In terms of their, I suppose, most great performer in this competition, 145 appearances from Ryan Giggs in the Champions League. That is the highest number of anyone in the club's history. And in terms of goals, well, Ruud van Nistelrooy is their top scorer with 35. Let's just show you United's stats for this season. 10 goals scored, 7 conceded, 99 shots, 48% possession. I wonder that was mainly a hangover from the Mourinho era. 86% passing accuracy. 525 miles covered. Romelu Lukaku, Marcus Rashford and Paul Pogba all have 2 goals each. Let's speak once again to David Moyes about this. David, I mean, United have so much history in this competition. Do you feel the weight of that when you're on the touchline yourself?
Well, I think when you're at a club at Manchester United, the expectation is to win these competitions, or certainly to be involved in them as far as you can go. And I've got to say, I think Ollie's doing a brilliant job. And I think the result in PSG was a shock to me, because I thought after seeing the first leg, I thought PSG had played so well. I thought it would be really difficult. But great credit to the manager and to the players for getting such a good result. And it gives them an opportunity now. I think they'll go into the competition believing that, or into the final part of the competition believing that they've got as good a chance as MD, especially with the momentum they've got. But I think at Manchester United, you are expected to be in semi-finals, in finals, and I would expect Manchester United to have a right good chance of getting through in the next round. Hopefully the draw goes for them.
You mentioned that comeback against PSG. I mean, very few people expected it, especially away from home at the Parc des Princes. It's an opportunity, you say, but also, is the pressure off Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in any way?
I think when you're the manager of Manchester United, there's always pressure because everybody is expecting from you. I think Ole will know that from his being there as a player, but I think once he know the role he's doing at the moment, he'll be understanding fully what it means to be Manchester United manager. But I've got to say, his players are doing him a great job at the moment. They're picking up great results. They're in really good form. I don't think there's MD would really want to play Manchester United just now. So it'll be interesting to see. I do hope that they stay away from the other Premier League teams and they probably stay away from Barcelona. I think after that, I think they'll have a really good chance.
Do you think that this job essentially belongs to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer no matter what happens now, given the strength of what he's done so far, David? Or does he need to still achieve things to make sure of getting the job on the permanent basis?
Well, Ole couldn't do any more about getting the job, that's for sure. But it's not down to Ole, it's down to the board and it's down to the owners there to make the decision, and they said they would do it at the end of the season. So I think that's the way it'll remain. But I think on form and his performances, you'd have to say Ole's done as good a job as MD could possibly do.
David, thank you for the moment, and we'll have plenty more from our guests, Darren, Stuart and Chris. Not long to go until Liverpool find out who their opponents will be in the quarter-finals of the Champions League. Remember, they beat Bayern Munich 3-1 on aggregate to progress. We can hear more now from Jurgen Klopp.
A much better impact than if you lose, of course, but you can use both. You lose a game like this and you say we are focused now completely on the league and now we have to strike back, all that stuff, so you can use always a defeat, but it's better you win. And that's what we did in an impressive way, how I thought. And that helps, of course. It just shows in that competition that we made the next step. It's not, last year, I think, when we came through, it was always about sensational, free-flowing kind of football in a specific way, scoring from all areas, stuff like that. This was, how I said, was from my point of view the most mature performance we had so far in all European competitions since I'm in, and that I like that a lot. So that was really good.
The discussion here is who do you want and who do you want to avoid? We'll be discussing that and much, much more. The Champions League quarter-final draw is less than half an hour away, and as soon as those balls are drawn out of the bowls, we'll tell you here on Sky Sports News. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're building up to the Champions League quarter-final draw here on Sky Sports News. We've talked briefly about Manchester United. Let's focus on Manchester City. Pep Guardiola's side fighting on 4 fronts as they aim for a quadruple, but the Champions League has eluded them thus far. Here is their route to the quarter-finals. They topped their group despite an opening defeat to Lyon. The French side also held City to a draw at home. The other 4 games, though, were all wins. City then won 3-2 at Schalke and absolutely demolished the Bundesliga side 7-0 in that second leg, 10-2 the aggregate score. Let's just show you City's European Cup history. Their best finish was a semi-final, and that was 3 seasons ago in a 2015-16. Manuel Pellegrini's side in the end beaten by Real Madrid. City only made the quarter-finals last season. They were beaten by Liverpool over 2 legs. It's Sergio Aguero who's made their most appearances in this competition with 52. And perhaps it won't surprise you that the Argentine is also their top scorer in this competition. 31 goals. And counting for Sergio Aguero. Here are City's stats for this season. 26 goals scored, 8 conceded, 151 shots, 60% possession, 90% passing accuracy. Total distance covered, 543 miles. And Sergio Aguero, well, he is this season's top scorer in the Champions League as well with 5. Let's bring in Stuart Pearce, shall we, former Manchester City player and manager. How much pressure is there on Manchester City? Because if ultimately this was the main task for Pep Guardiola to tick off, win the Champions League. Yeah, it certainly is. But I think the club have got a philosophy that, you know, they're building the club. And I don't think there's, out of all the 8 teams left, I think Pep has got less pressure on him than probably any of the other teams. I really do. If you compare them to Liverpool, if Klopp doesn't win anything this year, all of a sudden it's 4 seasons without a trophy. That's pressure. Man City have already got 1 trophy in the cabinet already this season. I can't see him, even if they drop out the Champions League, they're not going to remove Pep from the project that he's on at the moment. So in many ways, yes, it's their holy grail. They want to win the Champions League, I understand that. But there's almost a philosophy at the club, look, if it don't happen this year, we'll have another go next year and the next year, and it will happen eventually. What about the fact that they're going for a quadruple, though? I mean, does that hinder their chances in Europe? Massively. Just talking to the boys off air, and I'm of the opinion whichever team win the Premier League will not win the Champions League and vice versa. I think it takes too much out of you on that running. So I think there's Liverpool and Man City got the opportunity to win the Premier League. I can't see a team getting their hands on both of those trophies. Do you agree, guys? Do you think that it's possible for either Liverpool or Manchester City to win both? Chris, what do you think?
Absolutely, I do think it's possible. I think then you've got to... Stuart's right, though. It's a big ask, you know, mentally, physically. But then, there's so much sports science around these days. You adapt your training, you don't have to train as much. You're just basically playing games. But listen, you ask the players now, at any of them clubs, if they want to be playing for the Champions League and the Premier League right to the end of the season, not one would say no. These are the games they want to play in. I think Man City have got the squad to do it, though. Yeah. I mean, out of the 2, Liverpool, Manchester City, because obviously it's a straight shootout for the Premier League between them 2. But I think out of them 2, I think Manchester City have got the depth in their squad. I mean, they've got players on players, world-class players, that could come in and do the both. David Moyes, let's bring you in. You're at our Manchester studio right now. What about Manchester City? If they had a choice between the Champions League on its own and a domestic treble, which one do you think they'd prefer?
Oh, I think that the Champions League is something that Manchester City are striving to achieve, and they won the Premier League last year. I think they've got a chance of winning both, I really do. I think that their team's so good. I watched them in midweek against Schalke, and they were exceptional. They didn't play particularly well in the opening 10 or 15 minutes, but after that they were very good. So I think they'll be striving to win both the tournaments they're going for. In fact, I think they'll be striving to win every tournament. And I think when you go into it as a manager, I think that you can't sometimes pick and choose what you want to win. So I think that Manchester City, with the players and the squad they've got and the way they're playing at the moment, have every chance of achieving winning. Certainly one of them, if not both of them. Let's move from Manchester City to the team who knocked them out of the Champions League last season. That was, of course, Liverpool. Jurgen Klopp's side beaten in the final in Kiev last season by Real Madrid. But will they go one better? Liverpool runners-up in their group behind PSG. Started well with a 3-2 win at Anfield against the French side, but then defeats away at Napoli. Also, very surprisingly, away at Red Star Belgrade and then in Paris, lefting them needing to beat Napoli at Anfield. They managed to do that. Mohamed Salah scoring the winner, and then after a 0-0 draw against Bayern Munich at Anfield, well, Liverpool memorably won 3-1 at the Allianz Arena to progress.
Liverpool, of course, have such a rich history in Europe's premier competition. 5 times is the phrase, isn't it? 5 wins in total. 77, 78, 81, 84, and most recently, who could forget that night in Istanbul? 3-0 down at half-time against AC Milan, came back to win on penalties, Jerzy Dudek, etc., etc., etc. 2005, their 5th European Cup. As we mentioned, they were beaten finalists last season. Real Madrid celebrating after that Gareth Bale overhead kick in Kiev. What about their leading appearance maker in this competition? It's Jamie Carragher. He's made their most appearances with 80 in total, and it's Steven Gerrard who has their most goals with 21. What about this season, though, in the Champions League? Well, Liverpool have scored 12, conceding 8, 120 shots in total, 52% possession, 82% passing accuracy. They've covered quite a few miles, 551 in total. Sadio Mane, Mohamed Salah have 3 goals each. They are the top scorers in the Champions League for Liverpool this season. OK, well, Chris Kirkland, it's over to you. How does Jurgen Klopp balance Premier League and Champions League? What is the secret at this point now, the beginning of the end of the season, to get that right?
Just keeps doing what he's been doing all season. You know, he knows his players, he trusts his staff. We talk about sports science and resting players, and he's doing a great job at the minute. They're on a great run. The confidence is high. The other night in Bayern, you know, to win 3-1 against you know, a good Bayern, not as good as years gone by, but you've still got to do it. I mean, they had a tough group with Napoli and PSG. Getting through that's an extremely tough group. So the confidence is high at the minute, but Jurgen always says it, one game at a time. He'll forget about this now. His next game he's focusing on is Sunday against Fulham, and that's what he's maintained all season.
How impressive was that result? I mean, not only because it was against one of the giants in Bayern, but also Liverpool had lost their previous 3 away games in the Champions League, and then to go to the Allianz Arena and pull that off. What does that send as a warning to the rest of the competition?
Of course it does. I mean, 0-0 at Anfield, there's not many games Liverpool don't score and, you know, after a 0-0, we were always confident that we would score out there, which means obviously Bayern needed to get at least 2. But, you know, it turned out to be another wonderful night. The fans out there were superb. And now we look forward to the draw today. But we're just saying that, you know, no team's going to want to come to Anfield on European nights. If you've had the pleasure of being there for European night, it is so special. The fans get right behind the team, and no team, whoever draws Liverpool today, will be excited, yes, about playing there, but extremely
It's just something about hearing "You'll Never Walk Alone" on a midweek night under the lights that just makes the spine tingle even more than it does on a Saturday in a regular league game at Anfield. What about key players here? Because, of course, last season it was all about Mo Salah, wasn't it? And they had the Fab Four that then became the front 3. He has been misfiring a touch recently. I want one name from each of you as to who is the key player for Jurgen Klopp in terms of their Champions League campaign. Chris, you first.
Well, I'll give you 2, Alisson and Van Dijk.
Oh, OK. All right. What about you, Stuart? What do you think?
Van Dijk.
Van Dijk for you as well?
Yeah, I was going to say Van Dijk as well, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, is that the big change in Liverpool then this season? Quite simply that they've got a £75 million defender in the centre of their defence who is, you know, making them improve and have another dimension to their play where they were weak last season?
It's not just what he does and gives to the team, it's the air of confidence that pans out to those alongside him in the back line and in the midfield area, I think.
And Alisson as well. He's made a huge difference. Yeah. I mean, having them 2, you look at them 2, arguably the best partnership there is now out there. I don't think you'll find, you know, 2 better than them. So the confidence they bring to it. And then we know that, listen, if Liverpool can keep clean sheets with the players we've got, you know, it's not many games we're not going to score in. Yeah,
and also given the fact that, well, Virgil van Dijk has had different partners alongside him. Joe Gomez, also Joel Matip, Dejan Lovren, and to have to keep adapting his play to suit that partnership is another thing. Let's bring in David Moyes once again. David, I know that Liverpool are United's greatest challengers and opponents overall in world football, but where do they figure in this picture? How much of a threat are Liverpool in the last 8 of the Champions League?
Well, you shouldn't be surprised because they were in the final last year, so I don't think anybody should be really surprised at how well Liverpool are doing in the competition. I think for them to go and win in Bayern Munich was a really big statement. I had got there with Manchester United a few years ago and we'd lost there. And very few teams go and win in Bayern. It's a really tough game for them. So I've got to say, you know, they deserve an awful lot of credit for that. And I'm listening to what you're talking about and listening to the boys in the studio. And I think that, you know, Virgil van Dijk this season's made some difference to Liverpool. He really is. He's maturing. And I think that to win the competitions and to be the best team, I think you have to have the best defence. And I think at the moment, Liverpool's defence is doing really well, and I think that it'll give them a great chance in the competition as well. Again, the draw will be all important today to see who they draw.
More from David to come in a moment. Very briefly, Chris, Liverpool against Manchester United, quarter-finals of the Champions League. Did it against City last season. Would you fancy it?
Not really.
I thought you might say that.
Listen, you're going to have to beat them teams eventually to win it. But you know, if you have to pick one, you wouldn't want any of the Manchester teams if possible. Spurs are a fantastic team, but if you had to pick one of the English teams to play, then it would be Spurs for me. OK. By the way, Jordan Henderson out of the game against Fulham in the Premier League this weekend for Liverpool. And there's going to be a focus on Tottenham to come with Darren Bent. What chances have they got of progressing in this competition? Could they go all the way to the final in Madrid? We'll be focusing on Spurs in a couple of minutes' time. Stay with us. Welcome back. We are edging closer to that Champions League quarter-final draw, and for the first time since 2009, 4 English sides are involved, and in around 10 minutes' time, we will find out who is playing who. Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp, Mauricio Pochettino, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, they're all waiting to find out who their opponents will be. Remember, the 4 English sides could also draw each other. There is no country protection. Who are the favourites then to lift the trophy in Madrid on June the 1st? Well, Manchester City lead the way according to the bookmakers. Barcelona and Juventus close behind. Porto, though, the clear outsiders, the team that everyone wants to draw, they are at 50 to 1. Let's turn our attentions then to Tottenham. And Mauricio Pochettino has seen his side's title chances slip away in the last couple of weeks. Spurs impressed in the round
of 16. Remember, beating Borussia Dortmund 3-0 and then 1-0. Absolutely brilliant result for them. Tottenham had a bad start to the group stage. Quite how they got through is, well, only they know. They lost to Inter Milan and they lost to Barcelona at home before they drew with PSV. Then a home win against the Dutch side just about kept them in it. They then beat Inter Milan at Wembley. A point in Barcelona in the end, enough to see them through as Inter drew with PSV. Spurs impressed against Borussia Dortmund, as I say, 3-0 at Wembley, 1-0 away in Germany. Takes them through 4-0 on aggregate to the quarter-final draw. Well, what about Spurs then? Their previous best in the European Cup was a semi-final. That was back in 1961-62. But on that occasion, they were beaten over 2 legs by Benfica. You may know this man, Eusebio, the Portuguese legend who took them through. Last season they got to the last 16, but they were beaten by Juventus despite drawing 2-2 away in the first leg at the Allianz Arena. Heung-min Son has made their most appearances in the competition with 21. Who's got the most goals? Oh, I wonder. It's Harry Kane, 14. Let's talk about their stats in this season's competition. 13 goals scored, 10 conceded, 123 shots, 53% possession. Passing accuracy is up at 865. They've covered 565 miles on that pitch, and Harry Kane, the top scorer, with 5. So that's how it looks for Spurs in the Champions League this season. Admittedly, Darren, they've lost 3 of their last 4 in the Premier League, and that form has really sort of tumbled away. Will that damage their chances in Europe, do you think?
Form-wise, obviously, it's not great. Obviously, they're still producing the goods in the European competition. They're probably the team that's kind of going under the radar. Not too many people are speaking about them. I think they've done really well to get as far as they've done. I think they could progress. I mean, even when they drew Dortmund, I thought there's a chance that they can beat them just because of how Tottenham could play and with the players they've got. And it's going to be tough for them. I mean, I'm sure a lot of the teams are probably looking at them thinking, well, we'd like to draw them, but I wouldn't want to play Tottenham over 2 legs because they seem to find a way to win.
Those results over Dortmund were outstanding, weren't they? To beat, you know, one of the top sides in the Bundesliga 4-0 over 2 legs.
Yeah.
But in terms of the Champions League as a whole, is it now Mauricio Pochettino's priority, or is it finishing top 4 in the Premier League? What do you think? Crack at history, winning a European Cup?
Yes, it's a toughie because like they're not going to win the Premier League. Obviously, that's gone now. I think the top 4 finish is now coming under a bit of pressure now with obviously Chelsea and Arsenal coming up behind them. So you might look at the Champions League and go, well, it's a chance for a trophy. I mean, it's been a while since they won a trophy. So I think obviously Tottenham. I don't think Tottenham have got the squad to be able to do both. I think they're going to need to prioritise maybe 1 or 2 things. I know the manager can't say that, but I think out of all the English teams, the squad's probably the weakest to do both. So I think Pochettino probably got an eye on this trophy, thinking that, well, let's give it all we can and try and go as far as we can.
How much does it depend on Harry Kane?
It does, but when he was out, players stepped up. I mean, Lloris stepped up. Sorry, not Lloris. Llorente stepped up, played really well. And Heung-min Son, I mean, he's been fantastic since he got there, but he scored so many crucial goals. And obviously, since Harry Kane came back, he's never left, scoring goals left, right and centre. So it's the way they're going to set up in this competition. But as I said, I think they're built to go far in the Champions League.
I think when you look at Spurs as well, their route to where they are at the moment, they're almost battle-hardened when you see some of the teams they've played already in the competition.
Yeah, Barcelona, Inter Milan, PSV aren't having, they struggled against some of those sides, especially early on. I mean, to get through that group, having lost 2 and drawn 1 of their first 3 games, I mean, absolutely astonishing.
2 clean sheets against Dortmund, fantastic. Well, I think the money men at the club would want them to get top 4 in the Premier League, but you've got a chance, you've got to go for the Champions League.
When you're this close.
You're in the quarter-finals of the Champions League, not been done for years and years. They've got to go for that for me, but I
wonder how much it depends on the draw. Porto at home second, you might think, right, OK, this is where we put the eggs in the basket, but if it's Barcelona, then maybe that changes.
7 teams that will want Tottenham in this, and that might just play into Tottenham's hands.
Yeah, OK. I agree.
Let's bring in David Moyes in our Manchester studio. David, are Tottenham dark horses in this tournament, would you say?
I think Tottenham have a team full of top international players. Some of them are real top-end players, meaning the likes of Harry Kane, for example. But I think that Tottenham will fancy themselves. I think Tottenham can play in different ways. I think they've improved in the tournament. I think the way you see them, even last season, I was quite impressed by them as well. So I don't think Tottenham will be easy for MD, who plays against them. In fact, I think Tottenham, you know, if the draw goes right for them, could find themselves getting through here. OK, all eyes on 2 big potential rivals, potentially come up against each other in the quarter-finals. Cristiano Ronaldo left for Juventus, ending his season-by-season rivalry with Lionel
Messi that he'd enjoyed when he'd been at Real Madrid, of course, but will they be reunited? Well, they both have impressive records in the Champions League, as you might expect. Ronaldo, 124 goals, 164 appearances. Messi, 108 from 131. They both have 8 hat-tricks, but it's Messi who has the better minutes per goal ratio. Ronaldo, though, has the edge in the knockout stages. Look at this, 63 goals in 77 appearances, also 14 assists in those games too. Some difference to Messi, who has 42 goals in 64 appearances. Ronaldo has double the hat-tricks at this stage, has a much better minutes per goal ratio. Let's talk a little bit about Ronaldo and Messi. I mean, it's a debate, but ultimately, actually, what I'm interested in is how they've evolved over time. Stuart, how do you think their games have changed, but they're still banging in the goals?
Well, listen, they've been at the top of their game for, what, a decade or more. They score goals, they play all the games. All this talk about rotating players and resting your best players, these two boys roll out the games week after week. And while you've got either of those two in your team, you can win the Champions League. Even if the rest of the team are not playing great, you can defend stoutly and they can win a game on their own. Yeah,
they've got this aura, haven't they, of just dragging their teams through. We saw that with Ronaldo, particularly with Real Madrid. Chris, is it fair to say Messi best player and Ronaldo best goal scorer?
It's an argument that I think everyone will have their own opinions on. I seen a stat the other day, was it Ronaldo scored more goals in the Champions League than Atletico Madrid have in total, which is an incredible stat. I mean, both of them two, what them two have done for the years and consistently as well, that's the word, consistently, 40, 50, 60 goals consistently every single year. That won't be done again.
Let's bring in David Moyes very briefly on this. Barcelona against Juventus is a potential tie in the quarter-finals. Would you like to see Ronaldo and Messi over 2 legs, or maybe leave that for the final and have them head-to-head in Madrid for the final on June the 1st?
I'd like them to be separated, because I'd like all the English teams to draw these teams possibly, and mean that giving the English teams a better chance of getting to the final. But I said earlier, I went to see Leon in Barcelona, probably turning up to see maybe a not quite so good Lionel Messi, but I've got to say, he was stunning. His performance, the way he played, the dribbles he had, his ability was incredible. And then this week we've seen Ronaldo go on and score a hat-trick in a game against Atletico Madrid where people didn't expect Atletico Madrid to lose. Ronaldo comes up with the goods again. I think they're two outstanding players, very difficult to call who's better or who's a better goal scorer. I just think we're really fortunate that this period of time we're all getting a chance to see two exceptional footballers.
We're not too far away from the draw now. Julio Cesar is the UEFA special guest who's going to be conducting balls out of bowls and seeing who will face who. But let's come to our striker here on the panel, Darren Bent, on Messi and Ronaldo. I mean, you were effusing and really enthusiastic about his assists against Lyon, not just his goals, because he could have had a hat-trick, he probably could have had 4. Yeah. But, you know, that's the other part of his game that he really contributes, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, we were speaking before about he seems to enjoy assisting just as much as scoring goals. Now, I don't think that's the case, obviously, on Ronaldo's side. Like, it's more like, obviously, he scores, and if he assists, yeah, he's happy, but it's the joy Messi gets out of assisting as well. And I'd probably agree with what you said earlier about maybe Ronaldo's a better goal scorer. I mean, I think if I need someone to get me a goal, and even with his first goal the other night, the desire, the hunger to get on the end of the cross, I think you want Ronaldo. But as far as playing goes and just creating something out of nothing and doing something special, then I'd go Lionel Messi. Stuart, can you see Lionel Messi actually kind of dropping even further back in the pitch? Because he's played as a false 9, he's played wide, he's played sort of floating, but he seems to be really being part of the creative process of a move rather than, you know, the end part of it. Well, I think all players of his ilk like to pick the ball up and run at players, so because they're intelligent players, if they struggle to get on the ball with their back to play, they'll drop slightly deeper. And as Darren said there, he creates more than Ronaldo. Ronaldo scores, you know, headers, both feet a little bit more, an all-round sort of finisher. Messi can be a creator, and probably the older he gets, he'll drop further and further deeper and create more than he actually scores. Yeah. We're getting closer and closer to the start of the draw. Just reading out some sort of technical procedures, obviously just exactly how the draw will be conducted, and as soon as those balls are out of the bowls, we will let you know who has got who. One name from each of you guys of who your former team shouldn't face, who you want to avoid. So, Chris, who, out of everyone, I don't want you to say, oh, maybe this one, that. I want one name from you. City. OK, but you beat them last season over 2 legs. Yeah. OK, maybe it's a different picture this time around. Stuart, as Manchester City former manager and player? Liverpool. I thought you'd say that.
They're an English side. We don't want them. And to be fair, they're dangerous.
Why is that? Why is that? Is it to do with just the style that Liverpool offer and that Guardiola has an issue with that in any way?
I think as a manager, whenever you play a side regularly in the league, the last thing you want to do is meet them again in the cup competitions, especially in these European games. OK, and Spurs for you, Darren?
Barcelona.
OK. Barcelona. Just the Messi factor?
The Messi factor, yeah. I mean, you saw what Messi did to them in the group stage, and you just know that it's his competition. And as we said earlier, when you've got someone like that on the pitch, it's always dangerous. OK, well, we are getting ready now for this UEFA Champions League quarter-final draw. We'll just remind you once again, there is no country protection. 4 English teams involved, Manchester United, Manchester City, Liverpool and Tottenham, and they can meet each other, of course, kept apart in the group stage and kept apart in the round of 16, but that means nothing right now. So the balls are in the bowls. They're just stirring them right away, right now. We're about to have the first one that comes out of the bowl. Will it be an English team at home, or will it be one of the other teams that are involved? We're about to see, as Julio Cesar is passed the sheet of paper and about to reveal who that first team is out of the box, and it is Ajax. Now then, Ajax away first. I think everyone is nodding their head in the studio to say we would fancy that because you'd like to bring the Dutch side back.
Any English team, I think, now would be saying, please, we'll take this.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot worse in there.
Despite what they did to Real Madrid, both home and away, despite losing, you know, at home, they were impressive.
I think it was a different Real Madrid side. It wasn't Real Madrid of last season. I think then, no, but...
OK, well, we will see whether Ajax are about to face an English team. That second ball is being unscrewed and opened right now. Let's have a look at who their opponents are. It is Juventus. Ajax against Juventus, which means that the likelihood of an all-English tie has just increased a bit because we've got rid of 2 of the other teams. I mean, Juventus, you'd imagine favourites to go through from that?
Yeah,
Chris?
you would have thought so, especially the way they've come back in the last game as well. Confidence will be sky high.
OK.
They'll be delighted with that draw.
How do you rate their chances overall, actually, Juve, in this tournament?
They've just gone up. Their chances of winning the competition have just gone up.
Right.
Away from home against Ajax, they would take that all day.
OK, third ball is being drawn right now. Let's have a look at who it's going to be. It is Liverpool at home. Like being at home for the first leg at Anfield, Chris?
No, I'd prefer being at home for the second leg. But listen, it's going to be a special night again. We're just nervous now.
But sometimes just simply that force of Anfield in that first leg can give you that advantage that then you can really protect in that second leg. Right, who will Liverpool face? Will it be an English team or will it be one of the other remaining continental teams? It is Porto at home first. Then you're heading to the Estadio do Dragão for the second leg.
Very
happy with that?
Extremely happy. Yeah, and listen, let's not disrespect Porto because they got to this stage for a reason. They're, you know, exceptional side. But they won't be looking forward to that tie.
So we've had Ajax against Juventus, Liverpool against Porto. We're in a live newsroom as well, and plenty of Liverpool fans here as well. Sky Sports News, you can probably hear them behind me. 5th team to be drawn out of the bowl is...
Man City, surely.
Tottenham. And they will be at home. Again, the Wembley factor. I mean, would you like to be at home for the first thing? Does it matter for you, Darren?
Doesn't matter. To be fair, it doesn't matter. Yeah. I mean, listen, to get to where Tottenham want to get to, they're going to have to beat, you know what I mean? They're going to have to beat the best. So why not at this stage?
Well, let's find out who is their opponent in the last 8 of this UEFA Champions League draw. The name is out of the bowl, and it is Manchester City. It's Pochettino against Guardiola. So, guys, how do we feel about this? Darren, Stuart?
Well, firstly, I think Liverpool have gone as favourites for the competition now, being that side of the draw, being who they've got. This, I think, City won't say it, but I think they'll probably turn around away from home first, potentially. I think it could have been worse. But that side of the draw is tough now.
What do you think?
Yes, it's tricky. It's going to be real tricky. But listen, as I said, Tottenham, if you look at their run to get to this stage, they've played some big hitters, so let's bring another one.
And, of course, now that means that Barcelona are out of the bowl, and it means that it is Manchester United who will take on Barcelona at the Camp Nou. David Moyes, your reaction to that draw?
Incredibly tough draw, but a great draw. After beating Paris Saint-Germain, you can take MD on. But I've got to say that, you know, a great occasion. It's the sort of games that Manchester United are used to, and it'll be a great night.
So let's just very, very briefly recap. It is Ajax against Juventus, Liverpool against Porto, Spurs against Manchester City, Barcelona against Manchester United. We'll have the semi-final draw in just a moment and plenty more with Darren, Stuart and Chris in the studio as well. Stay with us. The UEFA Champions League quarter-final draw has been made. We have one all-English tie. This is how it stacks up. Ajax and Juventus, the first two balls out of the bowls. Liverpool at home to Porto. Chris Kirkland very happy with that draw. Porto, the team that everyone wanted. Tottenham versus Manchester City is that all-English tie. Now, Barcelona versus Manchester United is the last tie, but United will actually start that tie at home. We mentioned before that because Manchester City and Manchester United cannot play in the same city on the same day or consecutive days, that United's tie would be switched because they finished lower than City in the Premier League. So they will actually start against Barcelona at Old Trafford and then head to the Camp Nou. Let's take you through the semi-final draw because that was also done during the break. And so it is Spurs or Manchester City who will be at home first against Ajax or Juventus. I think Stuart Pearce is happy about that from a City perspective. And then Barcelona or Manchester United against Liverpool or Porto. Let's head to our Manchester studio and speak first of all to the former Manchester United manager David Moyes. David, we got your reaction to the Barcelona draw, but now you could potentially have to make your way past Liverpool as well just to get through to the final. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think when you get to this stage of the competition, you're playing good teams. There's no real poor teams left in it. And I think if you're going to get through the quarter-final and you get to the semi-final, well, you're expecting to get one of the big boys. So if United can get through, then obviously they're going to have to play one of the really good teams in the competition. But United are one of the really good teams at this moment in time. So I don't think they'll fear MD. I think the Barcelona game's a great game. Maybe a little bit of, nothing to lose in it. I would see Barcelona as still favourites for the competition. So it'll be a really good game, and I think that'll be Ollie going back to the Camp Nou as well, which will be a big sort of moment for him as well.
Of course, 99 and all that. Let's just talk though about the switch of the game, because now you'll be playing at Old Trafford first, David. Manchester United will be at home first to Barcelona, despite the balls being drawn the other way around. Now, what do you think about that now, starting at Old Trafford, then heading to the Camp Nou? Does the win in Turin over Juventus in the group, away from home, give you some sort of hope that United can still get a result away?
Yeah, I do, and I also think that probably the defeat at home to PSG might just make everybody a little bit more aware, that make sure that we don't come out of here with a bad result, which was the case at Old Trafford against PSG. Let's make sure that we try and get a real positive result, even if it's a draw going to the Camp Nou isn't the worst thing. And obviously, playing Barcelona is a thrill in itself. You're up against arguably the best player in the world as well, which will give great coverage. So I think it's a good draw for Manchester United. It's a really tough draw, but it's a good game for them. It's the sort of games they're used to playing in.
Thanks for the moment, David. I think Manchester United could take a leaf out of Liverpool's split because, of course, they drew 0-0 at home to Bayern Munich, then went to a big stadium and managed to get the result away from home. So definitely previous there in terms of how to do it. Spurs versus Manchester City absolutely jumps off the page, though. And Stuart, you were telling us as well that actually they play in the league after the conclusion of this quarter-final tie. This could define both team seasons, couldn't it?
It certainly could. I mean, I've managed before, and the last thing you want to do as a player and a manager is play the same team consistently. Yeah. Now, in the space of 3 weeks, potentially, Tottenham are going to be playing Manchester City and vice versa, and I don't think either team will look forward to that.
What do you think from a Spurs perspective? Most Spurs fans, will they be dreading this draw, or do they think that they can beat Pep Guardiola's side over 2 legs?
I think they believe they can beat him just because of the run they've had in the Champions League. I mean, no one gave them the chance of getting up, did that. No one thought it would beat Dortmund. They did that over 2 legs as well. Dortmund didn't score a goal. So I think they're a relative chance. I mean, as Stuart was saying there, it's difficult playing the same team back-to-back in a short space of time, especially when you're trying to hang on to 4th place, obviously from Tottenham's perspective. Teams come up behind you, trying to get through to the semis in the Champions League. It's going to be tough.
That said, with Manchester City, now you've got Ajax or Juventus, and that would be away first and then at home for the second leg in the semi-finals. Yep. Is it opening up for Manchester City here? The quadruple's still on.
Yeah, I think so. I think when the draw was first made, I said to you, I thought Liverpool would probably jettisoned into favouritism. When the draw for the semi was made and that pitted Manchester City on the side of Porto or Juventus, I think it probably puts the onus on Manchester City now. They'll be quite happy with the 2 rounds that they've got in front of them if they can deliver.
Chris, Liverpool against Porto, so at home first, then heading to the north of Portugal. However, Porto, you might remember, they actually were trailing Roma in that first leg away from home, and then they managed to turn it around at home. So is there a threat here, or actually...
Absolutely. Listen, Porto, let's not disrespect them. They're here because they deserve to be here. They're here because they've beat teams and they're in the quarter-final, so this is, it's not a gimme at all. Yes, on paper, you would want this draw, but paper's never won a game of football, so, it's going to be a tough 2 legs. But on paper, yes, we are delighted, but there's still a lot of work to do.
Just finally to David Moyes, Barcelona at the Camp Nou, and then, of course, Liverpool or Porto. How important for Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to just make a good fist of this, regardless of the result, in terms of his future as well at the club?
Well, I don't think this will define how Volley gets the job or not. I think the Manchester United getting through was probably not expected. I think they've done great. I think there's a little bit of a free hit in the games they've got. But again, when you're at Manchester United, you're expected to win the games. And they'll go into the game, you know, doing everything they can to get through against Barcelona. And if they end up with Liverpool or whoever it may be after that, then they'll try and get through that as well.
OK, thank you for the moment, David. One word from each of you. Who now wins the Champions League? Chris?
Liverpool.
Stuart?
Man City.
OK, and...
Tottenham.
Oh, look, guess what's happened? They're back their former teams. My thanks to Chris Kirkland, Stuart Pearce and Darren Bent. That has been the UEFA Champions League quarter-final draw. Thank you to David Moyes as well in our Manchester studio. So the draw is out. Spurs Man City in the last 8.